It's Closing Time is an engaging and informative conversation between RentSpree CEO Michael Lucarelli and some of the most accomplished and important voices in the real estate industry. This podcast is brought to you by RentSpree, the easy-to-use platform that optimizes every aspect of your rental process.
All right, welcome to It's Closing Time. I'm your host, Michael Lucarelli, the CEO of RentSpree, and I'm excited to be hosting this podcast where I get to have insightful and meaningful conversations with some of the leading voices in real estate. In this episode, I'll be speaking with Scott Saporito. He's a realtor with Coldwell Banker One, and notably, he's the current president of the Rome MLS. So really excited to chat with you. Welcome, Scott. We'll be discussing today some of the Louisiana real estate market, some of your volunteer work, MLS mergers, and also really excited to hear about your outlook for the remainder of the year. So Scott, welcome, and thank you so much for taking the time to speak with me today.
Thanks for having me, Michael. I'm glad to be here.
Awesome. Well, to get started, Scott, maybe you can just tell us a little bit about yourself. You're with Coldwell Banker One, and also looking at your background, it looks like you've had a little bit of a background in property management, possibly in the past, but would just love to get a little bit of a background on yourself with your work with Coldwell Banker, your management as well.
Okay, so real estate was not my first career. I went to Louisiana State University, graduated in advertising and marketing, and so I did that for several years. And after a while, I went to work for a hospital system doing the same thing, doing their marketing and advertising and planning and things like that. And eventually got into their property management side just for some more opportunities. So I was in charge of filling their medical office space and started flipping houses kind of on the side through some of that. And toward the end of my career there, then I quit to do that full time. So that's bringing us up to like 2008. 2009, when the real estate market started getting a little bad. Just in general, a lot of the economy was not doing great. So I still had a house to sell and I couldn't sell it. So I hired a realtor to do it and she was able to sell it pretty quick. And I said, hey, that looked pretty interesting. I bet I can do that. So I started getting into it that way. I got my license and started selling full time and kind of put the house flipping on the back for a while. And just have kind of taken off from there. And some of my clients have been investment type buyers who are buying houses to rent out. So I kind of got inadvertently into the not so much property management, but more like a leasing agent type of arrangement. We're not talking a lot of houses, maybe 25 or so, just enough to keep me busy with that stuff sometimes.
Yeah, that sounds great, Scott. And I know that just going back, then you kind of touched briefly on when you got into flipping a little bit. And I think this is something that can be, I think, a really kind of exciting opportunity for people to look into. And it sounds like that was kind of your gateway into broader real estate, perhaps. But maybe you can share a little bit about how did you actually get into that and what was really the spark there and how did it go when you first got kicked off?
Right. So I was looking for something that gave me a little bit more freedom and flexibility in my time and maybe had a little bit more upside than I was making as a salaried employee, right? I think that's probably a pretty common way for people to get involved in it. And, I was fairly handy. And an opportunity just came up in my wife's parents' neighborhood. There was a house that went up for sale by owner, and we went and talked to the owner, and we wound up making an offer and buying it, and that was kind of the gateway into it. And I kind of made the mistake. Well, no, I don't want to say mistake, but I kind of felt like I had to do as much of the work as possible in order to not have as much money going out paying subcontractors and everything. And I found that takes a while to do that. First, you have to learn how to do it and then do it, and then maybe redo it if it didn't come out well. So you kind of learn, you get your bumps and bruises along the way, and start hiring more expertise in there. So that's really kind of how I got kicked off.
think it's definitely a learn from experience type of thing too, right?
Yes.
And there's
Yes.
only so much I think that you can, yeah, you want to talk to people and try to gather as much information as you can, but it's just one of those things where until you do it and like see the whole process through, you're not really going to know all the do's and don't do's and pitfalls, and it may be different for different people as well. So,
Definitely.
and do you remember how like that first deal went for you? Like, how did it go? Like from a high level?
Um, we didn't lose money on it. We didn't make a
Oh,
whole
that's a
either.
good start, right?
So, yeah, and I think I probably lost about 15 pounds doing it because for a while the electricity was off, and it gets quite warm in South Louisiana. So, working there in the house in the summertime, and well, really any time of year, it get quite warm there. But so literally blood, sweat, and tears on that one.
But then I think a lot of it is like just the learning that you got from it too, right? Like that's
Oh yeah, it's been
probably
great because
invaluable, right?
I learned a lot about what to look for, not only in my own personal house when there's maintenance to be done, but also in helping clients buy houses. Like this is going to be a problem, or this is not very serious. Make sure you hire somebody to do this. Don't try to do it yourself, kind of stuff. So, yeah, I mean, I think there's always a good chance when you've had maybe 2 or 3 other careers before you get into selling real estate to draw on what you can to help you in your current business. So, like my marketing background is come in handy and try to market and advertise for my properties that I have listed, but also this flipping and things like that also help too with helping your clients evaluate properties.
Yeah, no, that's definitely a huge benefit when you just really have that knowledge that you can bring to the table and you've done it yourself. So, like you said, oh, this is going to be a problem. This is not, you're going to need to hire someone for this. Like, so that's
Right. Right.
hugely beneficial. But I also feel like one thing that struck me as well is kind of that entrepreneurial drive that you seems like had, right? Because you were kind of doing, I think you said more of a 9 to 5, right? And then you just, oh, that wasn't really like doing it for you in some ways. So you wanted to really just try to challenge yourself and elevate yourself a little bit.
Yeah, I think that's important. If you're feeling unfulfilled in what you're currently doing, I'm not the kind of personality that's going to sit there and complain about it. I want to try to improve, and I have to learn a lot of things about getting into that type of business of house flipping and real estate. But it's really allowed a lot of flexibility in my life, which has increased the quality of life some because when you start having kids and you got to start running in 100 different directions, there's only so much each parent can do. So being able to be freed up to do a lot of that stuff is coming very helpful.
And then ultimately you did get your license, right? And
Right.
so that I think is huge. And so maybe you can share a little bit about how you've built your business up as well. Like when you came into it, did you have some network that you had built up from maybe some of the flipping that you did? How did you kind of get the momentum built from that point as
Well,
well?
yeah, that's a good question. So since I'd had a number of different careers, I started real estate in my 40s. So I had already built up networks around other jobs, other hobbies, playing basketball with a group of guys or baseball or in an athletic club or things like that. So a lot of those networks were really important when you start getting established in your real estate career to call on those people. And so that helps you kind of jumpstart your career early on, is relying a lot on people that because I think that's the most powerful type of relationship or lead that you can get as a referral, right? So that really helped out a lot. So that's kind of what started things off for me.
And do you remember back then, was there anything that you wish that you knew then that you know now, kind of just starting off?
I think the biggest thing that I took away from my early career, looking back on it, is that you don't have to be a perfectionist. You don't have to know 100% about everything and like a particular marketing piece or the scripts that you use to make your calls to people. That doesn't have to be perfect. Presentations don't have to be perfect. Just get out there and do it and kind of learn as you go, because odds are you're going to know more about your subject than the average person that you're calling on. So if you have a little bit of that perfectionist in you and you're just starting out your career, try to set that aside as much as possible and just get out there and get started and do it.
I think I'm sensing a theme here, Scott. It sounds like the same kind of theme from when you kind of just got into the flipping at the beginning, right? Like if you were really worried about being able to know every little thing about it before starting,
Right.
then you never would have started it. But by just jumping in and doing it, you learned a bunch from that. And I think you need to kind of have that mindset and just be willing to try new things, learn from them, iterate, and then just improve the next time. Right. So I think
Right.
that's a huge piece of advice.
Yeah, and keep learning along the way, definitely. I don't think you've ever learned it all, so just keep going with your education.
Yeah. Yeah. It sounds great. And like, can you share a little bit about the Louisiana market and what you're seeing these days? What's
Yeah, so
been kind of going
Louisiana,
on?
I'm sorry.
Oh no, yeah, go on. Sorry.
The Louisiana market is it's kind of have some ups and some downs. Um, I guess like a lot of markets, home prices are still trending up right now, and also inventory is going up, which is great. Especially comparing it to last year, where prices were up, but there was no inventory. You couldn't find anything, and when you did, it was just an all-out race to get your purchase agreements in, and battling a lot of multiple offers and things like that. So on the flip side to that, of course, with interest rates being higher, that's creating a little bit of hesitance. Well, I want to say a lot of hesitancy in buyers, especially younger buyers, first time buyers, because suddenly with interest rates twice what they were from their lows in the threes, it's not only a financial hit that people are taking, but it's a psychological thing too, because I think a lot of people think, man, if I just bought last year, I would have been so much better off. And so we try to find good things about the market in every situation. And one thing that I've been telling my clients or just potential clients is that maybe you can get a house at a discount now where you couldn't before. You're going to have less competition for it, and you'll have the opportunity to refinance in the future. You have to go through a couple of years, 2-3 years maybe of higher rates, but I don't know if it'll get back into the high twos again, but maybe you can still save a little bit depending on how long you plan on staying there. So, we try to find the silver linings when we can.
Yeah. And I think for a lot of those folks too, it just like that they wish that they bought a year and a half ago or something, that could be the case looking back to now too, depending, right?
Right.
So it's hard to predict what's going to actually happen.
Yeah, because if they had bought a year and a half ago, they may have way overbought. They'd be upside down on the house, and may not appraise for as much anymore. So I think there's always ups and downs, and I think that's another good reason to stay educated as much as you can, so you can explain all that to your clients and set their minds at ease where possible.
Yeah. And when we talk about the market, right, and how it's been changing, obviously here at Rent Spree, we're rental focused. And I know you mentioned also that you kind of do a little bit of leasing for maybe working with some landlords as well. I'm just
Yes.
curious how you've seen any changes on that front from a market perspective, and how rental activity has changed possibly over recent times. Because when I look at it, it's like two sides of the same coin. When you look at housing as a whole, the way that rates are and inventory is, that impacts rental demand. And so I kind of see a lot of duality between those two factors. But I'm curious like what you're seeing on the rental side, considering you work with rentals from time to time as well.
Right, yeah. So rental rates were increasing at almost the same rate as housing costs were going up. And part of that was, and I was talking to some of my rental clients, ask them, well, what's going on? What things are you seeing that's causing your problem? The biggest one was homeowners insurance. course, those rates have just gone crazy. And they're talking about over 20% a year.
Okay.
They've been going up lately. And it really puts the squeeze on their margins. So what else can they do but raise their rates that they're asking for tenants to pay? And then, we went through a thing there with, like building construction materials being hard to get, being expensive. If somebody had to do any repairs and
Yeah, like those
it was
lumber
just
prices and stuff, right? Like all that.
absolutely, yeah, it was just a mess for a while. And, it's like any other business. The landlords really don't have any other choice but to pass those costs on.
And how about in terms of volume of activity? Are you seeing that there's more landlords that are renting out? Any like opportunities there? Because I think also when we talk about realtors and opportunities that they have for income, there can be lulls in the for sale opportunities, buying and selling, but there are other rental opportunities that may make themselves available. I'm curious if you see anything from a volume perspective as well.
Yeah, definitely. What I've seen is that um, when interest rates were very low and people wanted to buy a house, they were in a position where, okay, we've outgrown this house or we're stepping down, downsizing, and we're going to get a new loan, but we're not paying so much interest on our old house. Let's just keep it and rent it. So there were a lot of people who were buying a new house without selling their old house just because it was so inexpensive to carry that. The risk was so much lower and they could rent it out more than cover their mortgage on it and make a little profit and keep on adding to the equity in that house. So that was one of the things that really put a squeeze on inventory and just availability of homes. And I mean, I think we also get into the HGTV factor with a lot of those shows, just showing how easy it is to, buy properties, fix them up, rent them out, and all that. So a lot of people wanted to emulate that. So the competition for the investment properties that made sense, it got really, really high. So it's just really hard to come by a good deal. So you start putting all those factors together, and you've got a crazy rental market as well.
Yeah, definitely. And for some of the landlord clients that you represent, have you gotten any other opportunities after helping a landlord to find a tenant? Have you ever converted a tenant to a buyer, or landlords coming back to you for buying and selling after the fact? Because I think we tend to sometimes pigeonhole people. Oh, this landlord just needs me for this rental. But in reality, right, like you mentioned, a landlord is oftentimes an investor who has a need to buy and sell property in the future. So have you seen any perpetuation of business that stems from rentals at any time?
Yes, absolutely. And it took me a little while to figure that out because I kind of got brought into the rental market reluctantly because we're really not taught in the early stages of our career that working with property owners who are renting out their properties can be a lucrative part of the business. We're thinking of buying and selling only, but it's a way to solve people's real estate problems, right? Helping them rent out these properties, help them make it profitable, right? So just a quick story how I got involved in rental properties is that it was fairly early in my career and I was taking they would call it phone duty, opportunity time, whatever, just answering the phone when people had questions about real estate and they needed to speak with a realtor, right? So I was doing my little turn at that, and I got a call from a teenage young man who sounded very scared, and he said, can you help me? My father is driving in town from North Louisiana, about 3 hours away, to come look at some properties because he's going to buy me a house. And I said, okay. But I haven't heard anything from my realtor in 3 days. And I don't know where the houses are. I don't know. I don't know how to get in the houses or what to do. And so I made kind of like a snap decision. I said, look, I'm going to be finished this shift in an hour. Send me the properties that you want to see. I'll set up appointments for them and we'll go look at them. So to make a long story short, they never did buy a house on that trip, but the company that the father worked for wound up buying the 25 rental properties using me as the buyer's agent over the next 2 years. And it turned out to be a really fortunate, because sometimes it's like, I'm not going to be bothered with this young guy. He doesn't know what he's talking about. That's his problem. But I decided to take the leap of faith there and help him out. And it turned out it helped me out way more than it helped him. So at that point, I was selling all these houses and they were all new construction. So it was pretty straightforward. I started thinking, I don't want to do property management, but I don't want to turn these clients over to someone who does, because they're realtors also, and they're going to want to buy and sell things in the future. So I talked with them and we kind of figured out the role of a leasing agent, to where I just help them lease it out. They move in, I'm out of the picture, they move out, I'll go do the inspection, tell them what's wrong with the property, and then fill it again for them. So I don't have to take all those midnight air conditioning calls not working or my toilet's overflowing. But I just get to help them put families in their houses. So that's kind of how I got into the rental part of it. And I really didn't have any desire to do it. So I was figuring out systems as I went along.
That's an amazing story. And I think it just speaks to how important it is to take opportunities that are available to you, because you never know where they might lead. And being
Absolutely.
really active and open to just helping people, that just by helping people and offering a hand to them can really resonate. And I've heard countless stories that are somewhat similar, where helping someone in need that there wasn't really a whole lot maybe in it for you, or it didn't appear so,
Right.
but that means so much to people and it's paid dividends for you. So that's really an amazing story.
Definitely. It's my favorite story to tell.
Yeah, I love that. So before we move to the next section here, where I do want to talk about some of the MLS work that you've done and also some of your volunteer work, we're going to break things up and we're going to have a segment meet in the middle. So we'll go through a couple questions and we'll get some quick rapid fire answers from you. Scott, are you ready?
I think so.
All right. So what's your best book recommendation for real estate professionals?
So like with the future coming up, is that what we're talking about here? Or
Just like any book or like any
book.
mentorship
Okay, book. I
resources
got you.
for real estate professionals. Yeah.
I'm going to say something that not a lot of people say, is that I really don't read a lot of real estate books. I'm more of a real estate publication reader, like different news sources like Inman or Risk Media or the Housing Wire, or even NAR publishes a lot of articles. I tend to like to read a lot of short informational type things. So I think it's just important to keep yourself abreast of current events in our business than it is to, and plus I have a short attention span. So
I think that's great. And bringing that value is just direct and to the point, right? Like what's going on? What do I need to know? And how can I use this timely information for the benefit of my clients, staying current on
absolutely.
things? That's
Absolutely.
amazing. And then next question, what are 3 things that a real estate agent should consider about their business moving forward?
Well, it wasn't really too much on my radar screen until this state conference we had earlier this week. But this whole AI thing, I think there's a lot of ways that it can help a realtor, but there's a lot of pitfalls to it too. You can't rely on it 100%. You can use it to take some shortcuts in some of your writing and communications, and maybe helping you with image for your marketing piece or something like that. But I did learn that sometimes these like Chat GPT and Bard and all that, they make up things. So that's a little scary. So I think you definitely need to get a handle on how to use that. You don't want to be left behind. But saying that, kind of like on the opposite end for me, is keeping that personal touch with clients or potential clients, because in the end, somebody wants to feel comfortable with who they're working with. They want to trust them. They want to know them a little bit. So I would much rather have like a referral type lead than an internet lead any day, because there's already that personal connection there, whether it's through a colleague or friend or something. So keep up as many of those personal touches as you can. And then, of course, my one of my favorite things is education, especially in the real estate market, whether it's continuing education you do that your state association makes you do, or whether it's just classes you take on your own, especially with some of these legal battles coming up with NAR and the commission structure and things like that. Just trying to stay abreast of what changes you may have to make to your business coming up in the future because of some of that.
Those are really great points, Scott. Thank you for that. And I think leads quite nicely to my next question. When we talk about some of the volunteer roles that you've had, right? Like current president of Rome MLS, and you've held so many other positions over the years where you've provided service to other realtors in the industry. Can you share a little bit about what was it that led you to be involved with volunteering in this capacity to begin with?
Yes, definitely. So going back a few years, probably about 7 or 8 years, 2015, 2016, I was working on getting they called it your CRS credentials, certified residential specialist. It's really hard to get. You have to have a certain level of classroom training, a certain level of sales. And I think maybe 2 or 3% of realtors throughout the country have achieved this credential or designation. So I was complaining out loud one day in my office that in order to take a CRS class, you have to travel across country to go to it. It's going to be very expensive. And there was, of course, a lady in my office who's a fellow realtor and a colleague who overheard me and said, well, I'm going to be president of the Greater Baton Rouge Association of Realtors in the next year. And I want to appoint you as a vice chair of our professional development committee so you can fix these problems instead of just complaining about them, right? So her name is Ginger Malden, and she is still a colleague and a great friend of mine today. But it was that conversation, Michael, that really kind of started it, because after my first meeting, I was kind of hooked because I was like the only one who was interested in selecting which exact classes that we wanted to have. So it didn't take a whole lot to stand out, if you have an opinion. And I think a property investment class was one of the first ones I recommended. So that's how I got started in it. And I've always enjoyed it. It's a way for me to give back to an industry that has given me a lot. And it helps. I love doing transactions with agents that I've met through the association. I think just makes it a lot easier communication, and a lot less likely to misunderstand somebody, and get into an argument or something like that. So there's a lot of pluses to it. But so basically I complained and got called out on it, and then that could be part of the solution was how I got started.
Yeah, I think there's a way to put a positive spin on that somehow, right? Like it was kind of
right.
you being able to take initiative to actually make an impact that not only would solve your problem, but it would prevent other people from experiencing this problem as well. It's kind of funny how you got to that point. So I love that. But I think that's amazing that, you're able to affect positive change for things that you had this problem, but you're not the only person that's probably running into this. So you can actually be proactive and make a difference for many people by enacting some of these changes.
Yep, absolutely.
And coming to today, are there any specific initiatives? Obviously, don't need to hear anything that's specifically confidential or anything that you can't talk about, but just from a high level, any insights that you can give us about what types of things that you're working on with Rome in particular, any priorities there?
Yeah. So I've been working on the Rome project since the beginning, going on about 4 years. And we have four associations that came together: Baton Rouge, New Orleans, Alexandria, and the home of Thibodeau, both of Louisiana. So the two largest markets, Baton Rouge and New Orleans, and two of the smaller ones, Alexandria and Thibodeau, Bayou area, they call it, all came together. And I was really impressed with how each association had to give up a little bit in order to gain something. And we were all like-minded and eventually got to a place where we could all do that. So one of the things that you start thinking about is, well, should we expand further and include more parts of the state? So right now, I think we have about 12,000 of the 16,000 or so realtors in the state of Louisiana. So there's still a few out there. There's probably about 5 or 6 associations that we could bring in. So we definitely have an eye towards expanding in the southern part of the state, and we'd love to have more partners in that, because one of the great things about it, Michael, is that when you list a house in Baton Rouge before Rome, it would be exposed to all the realtors in the Baton Rouge area. But now through Rome, instead of just 3,500 realtors being exposed to it, you're exposed to 12,000 realtors and all their customers and clients. So that's been really gratifying to work with with that project.
Yeah, and for our listeners as well, talking about MLS consolidation here, and I think Scott, you've done a great job, even just laying out one of the really key benefits of doing something like that, which is that you can get a lot more visibility a lot easier for listings, right? By having it go to just a much broader network and not being limited to just maybe your MLS or your association. So you're able to really expand that audience. And not only does that help a member or a subscriber, but that also obviously translates to benefit for clients as well, because there's just that much of a broader reach for the listings and the marketing that's going out, right?
Yes, that's right. Yeah.
Are there any other benefits that you're expecting to see from the consolidation here? Aside from that, I think it probably makes things also administratively easier. And then, so I'm just curious, like any other benefits as well.
Yeah, something that's come out of this is in some of our contracts, we don't have 4 individual contracts from the 4 associations. Now they're all handled under Rome. And most of the time when you can guarantee more users or more money to the company, you can get a lower rate. So it saves each of the associations a little bit of money on that. And some services have been consolidated, like let's just say legal services. We all have the same issues and problems for the most part in the associations, especially in a common area like in the state of Louisiana or Gulf South. And you know, you're not paying 4 different attorneys, 4 different fees. You can pay one and get it solved, and you share the results with the other associations in your group, in this case Rome. So there's a lot of different ways you can save money. There's a lot of time saving things too, especially for the larger brokers who may have realtors and offices in multiple associations, right? So before Rome, they had to enter those listings at each of the associations that they were a member of. And now they just have to enter it once, and it covers all 4 of these associations. So there's some time savings there too.
Yeah, for sure. It sounds like for me, it's like one thing, right? It's better bargaining power because you have a larger group and you're able to provide arguably a better suite of tools and services for that larger group of people by leveraging the bargaining power. And then there's economies of scale because you're able to now not have to create something for 4 different organizations, but you're able to scale something for just one time and everyone is going to be able to gain access to that. So I think that's huge
Right.
and definitely
Yeah,
a big benefit. What were some of the challenges that came with the consolidation? Because consolidation is a big topic. And I know that you guys weren't the only ones thinking of it. And there's some that are probably thinking of it now about whether they should dive in. I know you're thinking of more consolidation, but aside from the benefits, I know that there was probably a lot that went into this. This is not something that happens overnight. But I'm just curious, like, what were some of those challenges that you guys ran into to make this happen?
Well, I think one of the big challenges is this notion of like territorialism, where I don't want to give up any part of my influence or control or business in my area and open it up for outsiders to determine and come in and sell and possibly tell us what to do. So that took a lot to get over that, because I think that's a natural kind of instinct to have. It's like we went from our MLS committee to making all the decisions about our MLS with our local association board approval, to now there's another group of people who are deciding that. But guess what? These are people that and they work in Louisiana, and you can pick up a phone and call them. It's not like a big, huge company across the country or across the globe. So it just makes it a lot easier. That was one of the really key points in when we're developing what the core principles of RUM was going to be. It was going to be local control. And I'm not a broker. I'm just a realtor agent out there selling houses, but you don't have to be like real powerful in this business to be able to make a difference in it and help run this big consolidated, well, not big by national standards, but for this area, it's significant to help run and make the rules for it. So that's been one of the things that we've had to overcome with the everybody wanting to look out for their own area. And then, there's competing visions on how to do it. There's association owned, there's broker owned, there's more like a corporate owned type system. So, luckily, most of the people involved in this project were so adamant in keeping our associations thriving and healthy and at the center of what we do, that we decided to go with an association owned type of entity with brokers and agents on the board of managers and having a position of influence in it. So I think it was just a great compromise that we worked out.
And can you share more insight as to how you decided on that structure? And part of why I'm asking too, right, is because there's going to be people listening to this, whether you be maybe MLS exec staff, elected officials as well, that are, like I said, thinking about these possibilities, but just curious how you guys ended up on that type of structure as well.
Well, it took a lot of meeting and driving from location to location to have these meetings, and sometimes arguing like family and friends do at times. Like I said, with wanting to keep the associations at the center of it and get over this territorial type thinking, we had to make sure that each association that was a partner had representation on our board of managers, which is basically like a board of directors. So, but we also wanted to recognize that larger associations with their larger member count should have more influence than the small ones. So we worked out a formula where depending on how many agents you had in your association, that's how many entries on the board of managers you would get. But we didn't want it to be dominated by any one organization. So we also set up a rule that one association couldn't have more than half of the board of managers. So it's things that, we may have lucked into some of these things. We may have made wise decisions at times. We read a lot, looked at the way other organizations have done it, and kind of settled on this one. And it seems to be working pretty well so far.
That's awesome. That's awesome. And I think just to close this out here a little bit, I would just, do you have if you had the opportunity to provide one piece of advice for others considering consolidation, what would you say to other groups that might be considering something like this?
I think the biggest thing is to respect the others in the room, respect their opinions and where they're coming from, and understand that they are going to have pressure to explain what they're doing in this consolidation to their agents, to their brokers, to their association staffs. So you have to take it slow. You have to build up trust. You have to see what common ground you already have. And that makes it a lot easier, Michael, when you know that you're all working for the same thing. If you're working towards local control, if you're working towards giving your subscribers a choice of which MLS software they want to use, Paragon, Matrix, Flex, whatever. If you want to reduce it to, one listing, one entry, and it goes to all the associations, that makes it a little bit easier. So iron out those things first, and then start worrying about some of the other details. So do the big tasks first. Find out where you have common ground, because at that point, if somebody wants a broker-owned one and somebody wants an association-owned one, maybe it's not going to work, or maybe it's going to be a bigger hill to climb. But if everybody's on board, like with one style, whether it's association-owned or not, I think the rest of it will come together a little bit more easily.
That sounds great, Scott. Really great words of advice. And I think at this point, it's closing time for this particular episode. And I just want to thank you so much for joining me and spending your time to chat today. I'm really looking forward to seeing you at some of the conferences that we have coming up toward the latter parts of this year. So that'll be really great. And again, just huge thanks for you taking the time to share your insights with our audience.
You're welcome, Michael. I really enjoyed it.
Great. Well, Scott, this has been another episode of It's Closing Time with RentSpree. I hope that all of our listeners have enjoyed this conversation. As a reminder, please visit our website, rentspree.com, to learn more about our service. And also don't forget to follow on our social platforms. And lastly, don't forget to subscribe to the podcast. So thank you all for listening. Take care.